Sigma damage may help here, but he's got it in defense mode for now, so he's just trying to hide out. Thomas not trying to give up a game to James.
I think historically it's just been one of the real ideal super polymerization targets.
Well, James kind of slowing things down here, trying to figure out where to go next. Takes a look at what appeared to be a trap card down there, but it's where quote-unquote post side. Not sure what he included.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's even.
But,
Yeah.
So it looks like he has now 2 copies of Sigma minus.
I think I almost saw that trap card. It might have been a solemn accusation or solemn judgment. I know I saw a grumpy old man on it, so one of the two.
I will activate.
So we're going to go ahead and use the effect of Brisketty on here. Taking a look in the graveyard.
That was correct. Bonding Fusion Summon, so yes, that was probably
Quite a few cards already played this turn, including a Dominus Purge. Wow, okay, so we are really deep. Really, really deep. But speaking of going deep, combo continues.
So now he's going to special summon out from the graveyard.
I want to say that looks like it is.
Is that Flux?
Ah, it is Flux Oschenfeld. That makes perfect sense there.
Oh, okay, so it was Solemn Accusation. So Thomas went to use Branded Retribution, and now that's going to be met with a Solemn Accusation.
Now, is he paying 1,500 life points, or is he paying 3,000?
Well, this is a card that you wouldn't anticipate there being multiple copies of.
True. Solemn Accusation told you to see a grumpy old man. He does not look like he's having a good day.
Yep. I took 200, so I
But we'll check the life point count in just a second here.
62?
I mean, he looks like he's just in thought on Accusation.
Okay, okay, that's fair, that's fair.
I do agree on Judgment.
We'll have to see what the order of events are on that, which came first, right? The pay half or the pay 3,000. And I don't mean the publishing order of these cards. But jokes aside, it does look like, you know, Thomas again up a game here, but we do have 15 minutes left on the clock. These are both relatively grindy decks that could survive. Magnet Warrior is a little bit more linear. You know, it just establishes the combo. Okay, well, I'm going to try it again. Establishes the combo. Okay, well, here we'll go to game 3. Establishes the combo, right? But the flexibility of the Dogmatika branded deck may be able to get him through. But we are activating Magnet Bonding. And it looks like we are looking to fuse.
First effect to search.
Oh, no, actually going to add.
Yeah, there's multiple different effects. He can add, you know, Magnum Plus. He could add a level 8, or he could conduct a fusion summon.
I love the cards where, you know, multiple bulleted effects, but you can activate multiple copies in the same turn. Just choose a different bulleted effect each time. Wow, we are post side. I saw an anti-spell fragrance in the deck. Lots of interesting stuff there. So James definitely prepared, and that makes me think definitely chose to go first. I know we weren't here for it, but when you're down a game and you got those traps in the main, probably went first. But speaking of going, let's get the Magnet Warrior Epsilon there.
Epsilon effect to dump for cost.
Now he's going to activate Epsilon. It's going to allow him to send a level 4 lower Magnet Warrior to the graveyard.
Goodbye our Beta Electromagnet Warrior. And
I mean, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but Magnet Warriors, we are looking at basically another variation of a Yu-Gi game strategy here this weekend.
Yeah. I am a kid in a candy shop because it's not me just preaching the anime or something like that. It's literally everybody being like, no, this is the serious deck that will get me to the serious championship. And it is really cool that, you know, you get to see your favorite friends. But man, speaking of favorite friends, Exciton Night.
Yeah, we see Sigma minus hit the field. Now 2 level 4s. Allows him to go into Exciton Knight. Now, sometimes Exciton Knight is used solely for the fact that it is a light fiend. It does have a relevant effect in some circumstances. I'd have to get a better sense of the total number of cards accessible to these players to say if it matters here, but it may just be one of the ways to clear 2 level 4s off the field, because, yeah, it looks like he's using these 2 now for Synchro material. Or, sorry, Link material.
Looking at the IP Mascarena this time. And then Consolidating even further here for the Fiendsmith sequence. You don't often see that in the main monster zone. Sometimes it's a small trap zone, but we are going to use the effects. So attempt to fuse. We're going to go ahead and resolve here. Recycling the Exciton Knight. So the materials are Fiendsmith Engraver, Lacrim of the Crimson Tears, and Exciton Knight. That is a Fiendsmith Desiree.
Yeah, that's a good way of getting that extra Light Fiend into the graveyard. So now Desiree will combine with the IP. He's playing a really heavy Fiendsmith package.
Yeah, and it makes sense too because when you find your moment to make that big swing, man, the Agnum Day is so good with the power bonus and the piercing battle damage. But it looks like we're going to get rid of that for now with the Fiendsmith's Desiree effects. And similarly, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the Destiny on Proskenion.
Take a quick check of the graveyard.
They have ourselves a match. It'd be wonderful to watch from the beginning.
James is attacking. You're familiar with the Fiendsmiths.
I will activate the effect.
Anything in the grave that can help? I see the Rinbrum. We're going to go ahead and activate the effect here.
Does it target your
So, we Fallen of the White Dragon as Fallen of Abaz, so your choices
I would attempt to activate Among Day.
are that, but it looks like we may be activating the Agnum Day effect immediately. Going to special summon the Desiree back, who hasn't used its negation effect yet. So when you activate the Fallen of the White Dragon, no, we are going to non-target negate that.
Yeah, I wanted to play up, but what I was about to say is if you're familiar with the Fiendsmith package, you'll know the Battle Phase of Gum Day sequence, where you can get some damage in and then basically swap it out for a Desiree. It makes it such that very suddenly you have accumulated 8,000 points of damage on the table.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Speaking of very suddenly, it looks like there has been a concession there from Thomas. So I believe that James is going to be the winner of this game.
So 18?
I think maybe we need to rewind just a little bit. No, okay, they're just illustrating to the judge. Here's the math. Here's what's going on. Here's the attacks.
And then... What do we do here?
Band plays on, not sure of the discussion here.
I haven't added anything to my hand yet.
We've already packed up our cards. Tournament policy guidelines say that when a player concedes, that's you can't undo that. But our judges are here and at the ready. Looks like play has paused. So
yeah, I'm not sure there's a practical way of returning back to the game state that we were in.
You kind of can. I mean, we kind of know all the cards. It might be a little cumbersome there, but if you can rewind against it, you can. But that depends on whether or not somebody said, I concede. Get an update from our match in progress probably soon here. So yeah, again, like I said, we'll get an update, find out what it is we're missing there in the equation. Seemed like it was game to me, but we dropped kind of in the middle of the duel, so we don't know if there was maybe a restriction that prevented him from going through that line. If it worked as intended, that is really cool to get that, just that big punch, the high ceiling. I did see when he was shuffling through his deck, he did have Fiendsmith in Paradise. So it's nice to see like the full Fiendsmith package, if that makes sense, because I think it does have a lot of tools that will get you through everything you're facing this tournament.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen cards like Fiendsmith in Paradise, but obviously when Fiendsmith was a much more common and popular portion of the format, we saw that all the time. I think ultimately the DD Wave King Caesar being insulation against, I mean, Nibiru is not the most popular card in the world right now, but potentially cards like that can make it so that your Magnet Warrior package and combo is insulated in terms at least of that.
And it is a rock.
And it is a rock, right? That might potentially be one of the points here where it being a rock, you can actually search it in your combo. There are some variations where you can actually search it, but the point is that I think sometimes when you have these high ceiling combo-oriented strategies, the Fiendsmith package can slot in really well because it can potentially insulate your combo. Maybe that's the synergy here. I'm not as familiar with the Fiendsmith Magnet Warrior deck as maybe just a Magnet Warrior. I've seen Magnet Warriors quite a few times in itself in isolation. What
you can do differently, and what I feel like Fiendsmith adds to pretty much any deck it's in, as long as there's not like some other Light Fiend portion of it, is I feel like it checks all of the things your opponent can do, right? You start summoning cards from the graveyard, you start searching out cards from the deck, you start to summon multiple times, and by the time your opponent, well, they actually have to make a choice. They either get exhausted by how many card effects you've used, or they exhaust themselves by trying to stop all of the card effects. And so then, after you've done all that, then you can start doing what your primary engine is. And so if that's Magnet Warriors, all of a sudden your opponent has less things to interact with, or they've let you get some sort of setup. Now I can play my Magnet Warriors. So I don't think he's running something like Dark Calling and trying to combine Rocks and Fiends for Evil Hero Dark Gaia, but it does seem like these two decks strategically work very well together.
I think historically the Fiendsmith engine, it does present a threat. And now the thing about the threat of the actual Fiendsmith cards themselves is, yes, they can inherently on their own deal 8,000 damage, establish enough control. It doesn't happen all that often, but it is conceivably possible. So when you do begin utilizing your Fiendsmith package, your opponent is incentivized in many cases to deal with it. Maybe something like an Ash Blossom, for instance, because inherently one of the other problems is if you allow a Fiendsmith player to begin to amass resources, there's the follow-up. You're probably familiar with the recycling of Lacrima every single turn, using Requiem over and over. That was something that we saw quite commonly a few years ago. So there is that concern that if you're going to ultimately play a long game where you've exhausted some hand interactions to stymie the Fiendsmith player, the fact that the player was able to amass some resources and doing so can make it so that that deck does a good job in the grind game. So now all of a sudden you have a combo-oriented strategy that can play well in the grind game.
So it looks like we may have an update on what's going on, but we'll let you know as soon as we receive that. But it's just in. Thank you so much for that voice in my ear that you guys didn't hear, so let me go ahead and clue you in on. It's exactly what I said. Apparently, he wasn't able to go ahead and declare in that way that amount of damage. It wasn't the full amount of damage, but once you go ahead and pile up your cards, the tournament policy guidelines does say that that's it. Once you concede, it's a concession. So for those of you in the chat that picked that, you are absolutely correct. So it does mean that concession is a real concession, regardless of whether or not the opponent was really able to win or not. So be very careful. Verify that before you say, I lose.
So it's always important to look at the life totals, but that does mean ultimately that we'll be able to jump into Game 3 because that was Game 2.
And now we're here, so we get to see it from the start too. It looked like two very cool decks there, and I think these duels will be very careful there. Sometimes that happens, right? We even saw that in the WQP where Charlie Futch himself attacked and he thought it was game and it wasn't. So again, take the life point damage one piece at a time before you say I lose.
But it does look like that would mean that Thomas gets to go first in our third and deciding game. There's 10 minutes in the clock presented on the screen. We're not entirely sure if there's been any warnings or infractions or if there's been any time extension, so we'll just assume there's the 10 minutes remaining, which will necessitate that both of these players play at a pretty reasonable pace. Does look like the branded fusion from Thomas has been met by an Ash Blossom, a story as old as time, especially when you're playing pure branded. That could be